Hello everyone. In this talk, I will talk about the algebraic formula complexity of the Schur polynomial along with some other results. This is a joint work with Prasad Chogule, Mrinal Kumar, Nutan Limai, Adrian Shea and Srikant Srinivasan. Let's briefly introduce different models of computation that are primarily used in the area of algebraic circuit complexity. So what is an algebraic circuit? Algebraic circuit is basically a diacyclic graph having a unique sinc node called the root node, which produces the final output. The input nodes are the leaf nodes, which can be labeled by the field constants or variables. All other nodes are either sum gates or product gates. The given example represents an algebraic circuit which computes the polynomial 2x1 x2 plus 3x2 x3. Please note the blue edge that goes from x2 to the leftmost product gate. If we remove this blue edge, then this circuit can also be called as an algebraic formula. So what is an algebraic formula? If the underlying diacyclic graph is a tree, then the circuit is called a formula. The given example represents an arithmetic formula which computes the polynomial 2x1 x2 plus 3x3. Now let's see what an algebraic branching program is. An algebraic branching program is a layered graph which does have a unique source and a sinc vertex. Edges can only go from the ith layer to the I plus 1th layer. The polynomial that the ABP computes is the sum of all weighted paths that go from S to T. The given example represents an algebraic branching program which computes the polynomial 2x1 x2 plus x1 x4 plus x2 x3. There are basically three paths like SBET, SBDT and SCDT. Along all these paths it computes one monomial, and summing all those gives you the output. As this is a study about symmetric polynomials and their complexities, let's recall the definition of symmetric polynomial along with some other class of symmetric polynomials. Let's start. A polynomial is symmetric if it remains invariant under any permutation of its inputs. For example, x1 plus x2 is symmetric, but x1 square plus x2 is not. Let's define some other specific type of symmetric polynomials. Let's introduce them. The first one is elementary symmetric polynomial. The degree d elementary symmetric polynomial denoted by ED is the sum of all multilinear monomials of degree exactly d. The formal definition is as given below. The elementary symmetric polynomial of degree 2 with only two variables x1 and x2 is just x1 x2. Now let's see what is homogeneous symmetric polynomial. The homogeneous symmetric polynomial is of degree d is denoted by HD, is the sum of all monomials of degree exactly d. It may not be multilinear, and that's the difference between elementary symmetric polynomial and homogeneous symmetric polynomial. The formal definition is as given below. Homogeneous symmetric polynomial of degree 2 with two variables x1 and x2 is x1 square plus x2 square plus x1 x2. Now with these preliminaries, let's try to understand the motivation behind our work. For that, let's try to understand the fundamental theorem of symmetric polynomials. It says that for any symmetric polynomial fsim, there exists a unique polynomial f such that when we replace each variable of f, that is xi, by the ith degree elementary symmetric polynomial, that is ei, then the composed polynomial f along with these ei's gives you fsim. Note that throughout this talk we will assume the underlying field to be complex. Now, as we know, the fundamental theorem of symmetric polynomials establishes a relationship between fsim and f. A natural question would be to ask how their circuit complexities are related to each other. That is what Lipton-Regan tried to investigate. Let's see what they did or what they asked. Lipton-Regan in 2009 asked this particular question about symmetric polynomials. That is, whether understanding the complexity of symmetric polynomials is enough to understand the complexity of polynomials in general. Here they mostly talk about the circuit complexity. A small notation, Cf denotes the circuit size of f, n is the number of variables. So they basically tried to investigate these two inequalities. The first one is this, whether the circuit complexity of fsim is upper bounded by f with some extra poly n additive factor. Similarly, the other way around, whether the complexity of circuit complexity of F is upper bounded by circuit complexity of Fsim with some extra additive factor. From these two inequalities, it is easy to see that the first inequality is in fact true. Let's see why. From the fundamental theorem of symmetric polynomials, we know that if we can efficiently compute the elementary symmetric polynomials, then we can just plug those elementary symmetric polynomials in the circuit of F, and that will output Fsim. In the literature, elementary symmetric polynomials are known to have polysize circuit. Even they have small formulas even. Whenever in this talk I will be saying small, small means polycized. Thus, we can easily compute EIs and feed it to the circuit of F as shown in the figure, which in turn outputs Fsim. Now, what about the other direction? The other direction is not that immediate to answer, whether this holds or not. This is the particular question that was asked by Lipton and Regan in 2009. Can we say this? Can we prove this inequality? So, why they were interested to know whether this direction is also true or not? Because of this. Because imagine for a moment this inequality holds true. Then what will it imply? It implies that the circuit complexity of F and Fsim are polynomially related. Okay. In fact, just some additive factor away. If this would have been true, what could be its implication? Imagine we want to prove lower bound for some arbitrary polynomial. Then we can replace this arbitrary polynomial by the related symmetric one, because their complexities won't differ much. This is the one of the reason why Lipton and Regan were interested in the second inequality, to know whether that holds or not. Interestingly, in 2018, Blaser-Jindal answered this question affirmatively. Let's see what they proved. But before that, it is important to note that their result only holds for circuit regime. Okay, now let's see what Blaser-Jindal proved. So this is what Blaser-Jindal proved. They proved that for any F, the circuit complexity of F can be upper bounded by Fsim with some additive and multiplicative factors hanging around, also ignoring some log factors in the additive part, where D is the degree of F. Now you can see this is almost proving the same thing that Lipton and Regan had asked. Let's just stare at both these things and just compare what Lipton and Regan had asked and what Blaser-Jindal did prove. There is just some D square hanging around along with the circuit complexity of Fsim, otherwise they almost look same. So what they basically proved, that the circuit complexity of F and circuit complexity of Fsim are polynomially related. Now a natural question would be to ask, can we prove a similar statement about formulas? This was the primary question we are interested in. One possible way to answer this question would be to check if the Blaser-Jindal technique can be lifted to formula regime. So let's try to understand the Blaser-Jindal technique in a more condensed way. So this was the question. Blaser-Jindal technique heavily relies on one key thing, that is inverting a map. So what sort of map that is? Let's see. The map E bar that goes from Cn to Cn takes any input A bar and it outputs elementary symmetric polynomials of degree 1 at A bar, elementary symmetric polynomial of degree 2 at A bar. So it basically computes E1 of A bar, E2 of A bar up to En of A bar. So this is the map. Now what do you mean? What do you mean when you say inverting this map? That means if we are given any point in Cn, call it B bar, can we find a point A bar such that when we find E1 of A bar, E2 of A bar up to En of A bar, that precisely gives us B bar? Because this map is onto, we can always do that. For any B, we can find such an A such that if we evaluate elementary symmetric polynomial of different degrees at this point A bar, that will give us B. So the task is, B is given to us, we need to find A. I mean B bar is given to us, we need to find A bar. Now if we can invert this map efficiently, then what we know from fundamental theorem of symmetric polynomials will give us something like this. That is, evaluating f at the point b bar is equivalent as evaluating f sim at a bar. This is something crucial to note, and the proof is just as given a one liner thing, because f of b bar is basically f of b1 to bn, and we already know that b1 is e1 of a bar, b2 is e2 of a bar, and so on, bn is en of a bar. Thus we replace each bi by ei of a bar, which will give us f sim of a bar from the fundamental theorem of symmetric polynomials. Note that here we are talking about evaluations, that is f at b bar can be evaluated even using the f sim circuit. If we have given with the f sim circuit, then I can just plug a bar and I can output the same thing that f evaluates at b bar. But what Blaser-Jindal did, they lifted this idea of evaluation to computation. They used f sim to compute f using some appropriate setting of codes. Now let's get a bird view of Blaser-Jindal technique. Let's look at it. They reduced the problem of inverting this map to root finding, and then they implemented this root finding using Newton's root finding method. Okay, and what they did, they fed the outputs of this Newton's method to the circuit of f sim, and which will in turn output f. Okay, I'm ignoring many internal details, how they reduce this to root finding, how each stage is getting implemented, but this is the overall idea. They reduce it to root finding, they use Newton's root finding method, they use appropriate truncation and all, but I'm just ignoring those internal details, and feeding those roots that the Newton's root finding method outputs to f sim circuit will give you f. Now the question would be, can we lift this technique to formulas? To answer that, we need to answer whether Newton's root finding method can be implemented using formulas. The answer is, we don't know yet. It is open, because Newton's iteration or Newton's root finding method uses previous iteration computations in the current iteration. Thus we have to copy the whole structure if we are in the formula regime, and that will blow up the size. Thus we don't know whether we can lift the Blaser-Jindal technique to formulas, using their technique. So in this work we somehow bypass this roadblock to answer Blaser-Jindal kind of statement for formulas, but we answer it partially. Let's check out our result. We say, so this is what Blaser-Jindal proved. Blaser-Jindal proved that for any polynomial f of degree d, the circuit complexity of f is upper bounded by circuit complexity of f sim with some additive and multiplicative factors. The next one is what we proved, that is, there exists field constants a1 to an such that for a homogeneous n-varied polynomial g, if g of e1 minus a1, e2 minus a2 up to en minus an has a small formula, or rather has a formula size of at most s, then the underlying polynomial g of y has a formula size of at most order of s square n. And note that here we pose some constraint on e1 minus a1 to en minus an. They must satisfy some specific property. In short, we can think of like this, that if the composed polynomial does have a small formula, then the underlying polynomial also does have a small formula with some restrictions, under some conditions. They must satisfy some conditions, then this is true. An immediate corollary of this result would give us something like this. So Blaser-Jindal, now we can just stare at both the results, what Blaser-Jindal result says and what we proved for formulas. We proved that for any homogeneous polynomial f of degree d, there exists a point in Cn such that if f sim can be represented as f of e1 minus a1, e2 minus a2 up to en minus an, then the formula complexity of F is upper bounded by the formula complexity of F sim. This is what we proved. Now you can now as you can see, this is a more restricted result, and for it to hold it must satisfy some extra conditions, yet it has some nice applications which we are going to see now. Using this technique, we could prove that the Schur polynomials do not have small formulas, which in turn implies another result about generalized van der Monde determinants. We have not yet defined Schur polynomial, which we will define soon. So before stating the results, let's recall the definition of van der Monde determinant and how it is associated with the Schur polynomial. Principal van der Monde determinant is given as follows. It is an n cross n matrix where the ijth entry would be xj to the power n minus I, and the determinant poly would be the product over all xi minus xj where I is strictly less than j. Thus, it is easy to see that principal van der Monde determinant does have a small formula. The generalized version of this is more subtle. Let's see. The generalized van der Monde determinant is as given below. When we set t1 to n minus 1, t2 to n minus 2 up to tn equals to 0, then we get exactly principal van der Monde determinant. But here t1, t2 up to tn, they can take any positive value satisfying the below given constant. That is, t1 is strictly greater than t2 and which is strictly greater than t3 up to tn. The bad thing about this generalized van der Monde determinant is that we do not know any closed form expression for this one. Thus, it is not clear whether generalized van der Monde determinants do have small formulas or not. But in this work, we show that there exists generalized van der Monde determinants which do not have small formulas if the symbolic determinant doesn't have. In literature, we still don't know any small formula that can compute determinant. We assume that symbolic determinant is hard for formula, and that will imply that generalized van der Monde determinant also cannot have a small formula. We proved this result indirectly through Schur polynomial. Thus, let's try to understand the connection between these two. For that, let's formally define Schur polynomial. Okay, this is what we proved. Schur polynomial is defined as given below. It is denoted by S lambda. I may abuse the notation a little bit for simplicity by not mentioning the underlying variables. So S lambda is defined to be A of lambda plus delta divided by A of delta. Now, as you can see, there are so many jargons. Let's define them one by one. So what is lambda? Lambda is a non-increasing sequence of positive integers. And they satisfy this condition. Okay. What is delta? Delta is basically the fixed vector, that is n minus 1, n minus 2, that goes up to 0. This is the n length vector. What is A of lambda plus delta? That is in the numerator. Before understanding A of lambda plus delta, let's try to understand what is lambda plus delta. Lambda plus delta is nothing but the sum of individual components of lambda and delta. Note that L will always be less than equals to n, and thus the rest elements of lambda can be considered as zeros if L is not equals to n. Now let's see what A of lambda plus delta is. For that, recall the definition of generalized van der Monde determinant. Now if you replace these ti's by lambda I plus delta I, then that will precisely give you A of lambda plus delta. And note that here lambda plus delta satisfy the conditions that are posed by ti's, that is, they are strictly increasing. Basically, A of lambda plus delta is a generalized van der Monde determinant. Now, what is A of delta? A of delta is by replacing each ti by n minus I, which precisely gives you the principal van der Monde determinant. Now, an interesting question would be to ask whether Schur polynomial does have a small formula or not, or what is its formula complexity. This is how Schur polynomial looks like. That is A of lambda plus delta by A of delta, where the numerator is a generalized van der Monde determinant, the denominator is a principal van der Monde determinant. As we know, determinant and ABPs are equivalent in the algebraic complexity world. Thus, we can say Schur polynomial has a small polycized ABP. Thus, it has a small circuit too. This comes from the fact that if a polynomial H is defined to be f divided by g, where f and g both have small ABPs, then H also has a small ABP. This also holds for formula and of course for the circuit. This is a small thing that you can check. Now from this we know Schur polynomial does have polycized ABP. What can we say about its formula complexity? That is the question. As we know, the principal van der Monde determinant, that is A of delta, does have a small formula. This implies that S of lambda has a small formula if and only if generalized van der Monde determinant has a small formula. Let me stress this point that why Schur polynomials are interesting briefly. So we have already seen one reason, that is its close connection with the generalized van der Monde determinant. And as in the field of algebraic circuit complexity, determinant polynomial plays a vital role, we would like to know more about its complexities and different kinds of determinants. Another reason could be it is a very well studied studied polynomial in the math literature, such as combinatorics, representation theory, and algebraic geometry, etc. Also, one thing I didn't mention intentionally, that is Schur polynomial is a symmetric polynomial. It is a small thing to check why they are symmetric. Also, it is not very clear a priori why this is a polynomial. You can think about it. Moreover, it is not just some arbitrary symmetric polynomial, but it forms a vector space basis for symmetric polynomials. It is a basis. The other algebraic bases, such as elementary symmetric polynomials, homogeneous symmetric polynomials, there is another one also called power symmetric polynomials, all are known to have small formulas under some field assumption. But to our knowledge, we didn't know anything like this for the Schur polynomial. In this work, we proved that there exists lambda for which S of lambda is hard for formula, unless the symbolic determinant does have small formula. This is the overall works, and this will imply that generalized van der Monde determinants do not have small formulas if the symbolic determinant doesn't. This is the overall work summary. We present a restricted Blazer-Zintal kind of statement for formulas, and we prove that Schur polynomial, that is S lambda, and generalized van der Monde determinants are hard for formulas unless the determinant doesn't have a small formula. And now let's look at the open questions that we pose. Recall this result that we have already seen. Here we would like to know whether can we prove this result for non-homogeneous G, because we say this result holds for homogeneous polynomial G. Can we extend it to non-homogeneous G? Can we remove this constraint? The second question would be, can we prove it for A where A is 0 vector? If we can answer these two questions affirmatively, then probably we can make a complete Blazer-Zintal kind of statement for formulas. We use some special property that we have already mentioned, and we would also like to remove these special properties. Then it will give something very nice and in a more generic sense. Okay, so that's all I have to say for now. Thank you. If you have any queries, then please email me.